I've been thinking about some of the stories I keep coming back to. The books that stay in your mind long after you've read them. And I've noticed that they all share a common pattern. They're all describe in different ways the things through which we can be misunderstood, and in a way, they kind of point out why we can never be fully understood. The first thing I wanted to talk about with you is the fact that I think the first frontier between us and other people are actually our bodies and our physical forms. A lot of people feel, shame, discomfort about their bodies, but in reality, it is the first thing through which we're being seen by others, sometimes even judged by others, and our bodies are not always a great representation of ourselves. So it's interesting how we often dissociate from our bodies because we perceive ourselves more through our thinking, maybe our perception of ourselves, but the others, the first thing they see and the first thing they interact with is our looks and our bodies. And here I also thought about, the metamorphosis, because this is a great example of how people see not your inner world or mm, your inner self, but rather the outer cell. And Gregor's family saw him mostly as useful, obviously, and so their love was conditional as long as his body worked, so to say. He was seen as useful, but when his body deteriorated, they stopped even trying to understand him as a person. And there's one scene, in this book, and it always makes me cry when I read it. It's when he comes out to listen to his sister playing the violin, and he actually enjoys this music so much. He kind of gets taken aback by her playing the violin, and his family, when they notice him, they what do they do? Like, they throw an apple at him. And so you can see that he experienced one of the highest forms of human existence, appreciation and enjoyment of art, but his family saw only this awful, disgusting bug, and that's why they even hurt him for going out of his room. So it's a great example of how people can misjudge us for our form, and can even have, just a negative understanding of us overall because of our bodies and our forms. Also, maybe sometimes when we get sick, and some people may get really, really sick, they lose some tools that help them communicate with others. And so at the end, they kind of just fail to, like, show themselves as you are, or as they are, or make themselves be understood, because they don't even have tools that every one of us has. And it's really sad. Yeah, kind of sad. So the second way through which we can get misunderstood is actually language. Obviously, language is great for being understood, but at the same time, words are basically these labels we use to, describe something, and different people perceive these labels differently. When you say I'm happy, It's one thing for one person and an absolutely different thing for another. I think that it's not only that, especially with abstract feelings, like abstract things and notions. In science, it's simple because everybody is tries to agree what these abstract notions mean, even though it doesn't always happen like this. But still, it's a bit easier. But with everyday life, it can be quite difficult. And so, I wanted to talk about the fact that sometimes our language, our speech can be not only consciously misleading, but unconsciously as well. Unconsciously, I think it happens more often, but when people use deception in their speech, it's just it's just how can we even try to understand them? Of course, there are always hints, but still. And I thought that Lolita by Nabokov is a great example here because Humbert tried to sugarcoat and whitewash his awful, disgusting acts through his speech, and he tried to convince everybody through the use of language, very beautiful, elegant language, that he's actually an innocent person in all of this story. I think that it's actually this book is amazing. I can do a linguistic analysis of one of the scenes there so you understand how genius Nabokov is, and it's about the hidden meaning behind Humbert's words that shows his actual nature, his true nature, and how he actually and why he actually is guilty of all of these horrendous acts. So it's quite interesting. So what I wanted to point out is the fact that language is the second barrier towards being understood because we can never really translate everything that's going on in us into language. We can try, of course, and some people are actually amazing at it, but at the same time, you know, it's never perfect, I believe. So yeah, it's the second barrier. And the third barrier, well, I think it's us, Even we ourselves don't always understand what we want, what we need, what we are. And here I thought about Martin Eden, um, the man who thought he knew what he wanted. He thought he worked so hard to get it, but in the end, he realized that no, actually, these things are quite shallow, and I wanted something else. And I don't even know if he really realized it, but still, this book shows us that sometimes we sincerely think that we love someone or we want something or things like that, but do we actually? So it feels like we are this final frontier of being misunderstood because how can you be understood by others if you yourself don't even know what you actually want? And I guess, mm, you know, being present is not always identical to being understood, and it's quite scary. I think a lot of people are not afraid of being lonely as it is, but of being present and being misunderstood because it leads to exposure, I guess. But at the same time, if we look at all of these works, it's obvious that despite everything we do, we can actually never be understood because it feels like a part of human condition. And my conclusion is not negative. I thought that it really it really shows how valuable and precious the moments when we are understood by others, even partially, are, and how we should cherish people and maybe even communities. But mostly, I guess it's more a person to person, like how we should cherish people who actually get us, and we should ourselves try our best to understand the person in front of us, not just his outer form, his language, not his words, but the deeper emotions, maybe the deeper person. Yeah, that's basically my rant. And what do you think about it? I'm really interested to read your opinion in the comments.